So this started with a message from a viewer and an idea that didn't make much sense to me on paper. It's a Rangemaster treble boost using a Sziklai transistor pair. Yes, you did hear that right, a Sziklai transistor pair. This is a great way to use those outer spec transistors that you would normally throw away. It takes one PNP transistor, one NPN transistor, with gains too low to use normally. At first glance it looks like it shouldn't work, but then you start playing and the way that the circuit responds under your fingers kinda sounds familiar and something magical starts happening. Doesn't sound broken, it sounds intentional. And by the end of the video you'll hear how this transistor pair sounds pretty awesome, and it's a great way to use these classic old transistors that you normally wouldn't get to use. So what have we got here? What are we working with? Well, this is the enclosure that I'm going to be using. I've got this cool candy skull fabric. I'm a massive fan of this, and I love these sloped enclosures. I've already started populating it just for time because this is going to be a pretty comprehensive build. Sziklai RM, because this is going to be a Sziklai Rangemaster. I'm so excited about this. And here's our components, but before we get to that, what am I doing with this big lump here? Now this is an old Pi radio, and what's special about this radio is originally these come with one fabled NKT 275 germanium transistor in from the 60s. Now I haven't opened this one, I purchased it from eBay, and I'm really hoping it's got an NKT 275 in there because I'll be adding it into this pedal. Whoop, if I don't break it or drop it first. I mean, as you can hear, it sounds like something's loose inside. It doesn't sound well. I've got no idea if it works or not, and it cost me an arm and a leg. So stay around to the end and you'll see if A, I recovered an NKT 275, and B, if I do, what it sounds like in a Sziklai pair. Firstly, I've got to say thank you to Shane, who sent me this circuit through. Well, not only the circuit, he sent me the idea for a Sziklai pair, and then he also sent me the layout we're going to be using today for this circuit. So thank you, Shane, I really appreciate it. It sounds fantastic. Now let's look at the components we're going to use for today's build. I think you're going to find them interesting. Stay around to the end of the video and you'll get to see the transistors I'm going to use and how I reclaim them from an old radio. And as you can imagine, they're special. When it comes to components, I've gone all out on this one. The extra control, the extra Rangemaster control, is a tone control. And what that's going to be doing is shifting between a 1 microfarad cap, 1 UF, for all those people who despise me saying UF on the internet, cheers. And I'll be using these Soviet made in Ukraine paper in oil caps. Great caps, 1 UF. Now, the drawing we're using is from one of the viewers, Shane. Thank you very much, Shane, for sending it in. He shows a 4.7 NF cap, which is real low, regular Rangemaster territory, opposite this cap. So we're going to either get 4.7 NF regular Rangemaster or blended right the way up to 1 UF, which is kind of fuzz territory. Now for me, this will give a rating of about 500 Hertz, I think, maybe 550 Hertz, which is, you know, it's lower mid-range basically. You're getting a lower mid-range boost, which is what a Rangemaster does. It doesn't really boost treble, it boosts lower mids. And so you'll get anywhere between lower mids and a real fat sounding. Now for me though, yes, that's great, but just to give it a bit more range, I want to add in this. Partly because it's a blue moulded cap and I love blue moulded caps. This is a 2.5 NF cap. And if we were to use this, this will take our upper frequencies up to around the 800 Hertz mark, which is a bit more spiky, a bit more honky. We're getting into that Clapton Beano album territory. It'll shave off some of the bass maybe. And of course, we're still blending in the 1 microfarad, so we'll get the fat sound too. And I think this is the way I'm going to go, but we shall see. Everything else is the standard awesome components. You know, we've got ITT caps, we've got our unusual trim pots. I think this is an Iskra trim pot, and some vintage components along the way, some vintage resistors and stuff. The Sziklai pair was never designed for guitar. It's a clever little workaround that allows you to use transistors that are both inconsistent and incompatible for normal use. In an era when builders had to use what they had at hand and what was available, they used to do things like this all the time. You know, clever little workarounds where you had maybe a cap here to take away a noise, or maybe you had an extra resistor in to bias something. But that sort of thing has been lost to the guitar folklore, where we want only the best components to go in our pedals. But what happens if you find, say, a cool old NKT 275 transistor but it's out of spec. That's a cool old transistor that you can no longer use. Or is it? Maybe, just maybe you can use it in a Sziklai pair. And this is a really special bit of kit. So what's special about this radio? Well, usually these Pi radios contain the fabled, the exquisite, the coveted NKT 275 germanium transistor. Now they don't always contain them. And this one still has its leather case, so I'm really hoping that it's got it inside. I bought it sight unseen for less than I've paid for them in the past, to be fair. The plan is that the PNP transistors, the germanium transistors, in all 4 of the builds that I'll have for sale with this video are all going to come from this radio if it has the NKT transistors in it. One of which will be an NKT 275 that we'll use on this pedal now if it's, you know, reasonably well tested, and there's literally no guarantee of that. So what you find is on the back they have these big screws, and usually they're gold actually, but this one seems to be silver, or maybe it's had the gold worn off it. Oh, look at that. So these come with these massive batteries. I'm going to take that off there just in case. I don't know if there's any voltage still present on that battery, but we'll get rid of that. Now, what I'm seeing straight away is down here, it looks like we've got a replace transistor. I don't think that looks like a GEC. That doesn't normally come in these. This one here is it's a Tobisha. So Tobisha. That's a Japanese transistor. So that isn't one that normally comes in these because they're normally NKTs. And here we've got a black glass mullard looking thing, which is not one that I would normally see either. I can't see a marking on that one, but we'll get it out. Over here, this is where I'm not saving any of these parts. Over here is where the NKT is, and I don't know whether you can see this, but on this part here, this is an NKT transistor. Now, this is normally the one that's the 275. So the moment of truth is, there you go. This one's an NKT transistor. I'm not sure which type. It's usually a 677, I think, which are also good. And then right deep down in the bowels, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but underneath here, there's like a little frame with 2 transistors in it as well. And we're going to take all of these out. Now, what you could do is take the board out and desolder them from the back and do all of that. I'm not going to do that because, well, I'm impatient and I'm a Luddite, or a Luddite? No, I'm a heathen. Luddite would mean I don't believe in stuff, which I do. So what I am going to do is I'm just going to take my snips and snip out any component that's in the way, and I'm going to actually snip my way to getting this transistor out of there. Doesn't matter about the legs being particularly long because they're going in consecutive tags on our tag board, which is good enough for me. So there's our first NKT 275. That is the one. That's the expensive one. Fine. Now the next transistor along is also an NKT, but I'm going to have to cut a fair old bit of stuff out of the way to get to it. There's going to be people screaming at the screen here saying just take the board out, and I'm no doubt going to get 1,000,001 comments after this asking me why I haven't and why I'm wasting all of these components that are in the way. If you're buying one of these to harvest components, you may want to save half of these components. That would be great. But for me, I don't really need to. I've got billions of vintage components. Oh, there you go. So this is an NKT 278. This one's in a little silver heat shrink wrap. I don't know what's going on with the heat shrink wrap there, but maybe it was shorting out on something when we were putting it together. Now, like I said, inside here, there is another 2 NKT transistors. And if I bend that out the way, maybe we'll get to see them. They're right in there. So what I want to do is bend the frame out the way without damaging the transistors. Oh, there you go. Actually, the frame's loose off the side, so if I cut them out, they'll come out together and then we can take it off. I mean, if you're going to go through the hassle of getting one of these, maybe you'll want to recover all of these resistors and stuff like that, but These are old radios and the resistors don't hold up too well to moisture. People keep them in their kitchens, which is no doubt why we've had a few things replaced. I mean, I will reclaim these too. So that's actually a newer, that's an NKT 271. You can tell by the lettering, this is the older style lettering, I believe, the larger one. And newer it looked like that. So that's maybe late 60s, early 70s. That's definitely 60s. So this is a 271, a 275, a 278, and I would have thought, oh, this one here, the last one in this, and I forgot, is an NPN germanium transistor, NKT 773. So that's going to be no good to me. I'm not going to be able to use that unless I use it in the NPN position, of course. So let's get all of that out the way. And now the only other transistors we've got is our Mullard black glass at the back here. Oh, it's actually an OC44. There you go. We will test all of these, of course. The classic Rangemaster had these in. These are really coveted. To buy one that's tested on eBay, you're talking maybe £40. Especially one with Inspector used as a Rangemaster. Let's see what we've got on this. 142. Wow, that's massive. And 073. That is perfect for the Rangemaster. I am not going to use this in this Sziklai pair because Sziklai pair, because this is actually low leakage and high gain, and that'll be perfect for an actual Rangemaster. It seems a waste to use in this pedal when I can get away with something low gain. Now we're looking at our 271. Remembering I've got 4 of these going to be for sale, all with individual enclosures, and I want each one of them to be, you know, to have apart from this radio. I don't know why, I just fancy that. Oh, so this is current gain 69 and 160 milliamps. So again, that's another one that is right within spec of being used on its own, to be honest. I'm tempted not to use that one in this as well, which is a shame. To be fair, I actually have some blue jacket and orange jacket OC45, sorry, Mullard germanium transistors that I could use for this, so maybe I'll use them. We'll see. This one, PMP, current gain of 130, and the leakage is massive. This is basically unusable. NKT 278, I'll probably save that for some sort of tone bender maybe, but that's not going to be used in this pedal. And now on to our NPN before we get to the main one for the show. So this is a 773 NKT 773. It's an NPN. Usually these are low gain and quite leaky, but we'll see. Generally, NPN germaniums tend to be low gain and leaky. 63, and leakage was 150 there, I believe. 159. That's actually not too bad. I'd be tempted to use that in this pedal just for nostalgia's sake. And now, of course, on to the main man of the show, the NKT 275. Bearing in mind that these can sell for up to £500 each if it tests well within spec, which is mad. And more in some cases for a pair of them. PMP germanium transistor, yes, we know that already. Gives us our pinout 81 HFE. Now, if this is low gain, low leakage, this is like the holy grail. 80 is unbelievable. And 175 milliamps, that's amazing. So this would actually make a great standalone Rangemaster. But I do want to use it just because, wow, it's an NKT 275. I've got to, haven't I really? I've got to. So I'll be using that with the 773 in a pair for this pedal. But the other pedals in this line, I'm probably not going to use them. I may go on to use my orange jacket or blue jacket Mullard germanium transistors. Let me know in the comments which ones you would have chosen, and do you think I'm mad adding the world's most expensive transistor in to this pedal? Now this is the part where you find out whether the circuit's going to fight you or whether the build's going to really flow. It is, of course, populating the tagboard. The layout of this pedal is spot on. Everything just kind of flows. There was a few things that I would have probably put in different positions, but you know what? It all kind of works, and I kept it 8 tags aside, which is right up my street. In fact, it's the same size as my anchor drive, my Kossoff drive, and maybe what? 2 tags bigger than my Rangemaster. Fantastic. This build's going to be on Tagboard because I think it's the best way to build, and also that's the design that Shane sent in. It requires 8 tags a side, so 8 either side, and this is the regular Tagboard that I use day to day. This comes from hificollective.co.uk. Great website, you can get gold pin versions and all of that. But for this build, this is a little bit special, so I want to make it a little bit special, and I'm going to be using this. Now on the surface, they may look exactly identical, but they're not. This is a vintage, made in England, RS Components Tagboard. And you guys know I'm massively into my military history, especially English and British military history, being as I'm still a Royal Navy chief. This come from an old military spec hardware stock, if you like. And it's the same ones that you'll find on like a Type 23 frigate and all of them from the 80s or before. And it really does float my boat. I'd like to know what you think about me using this sort of stuff, whether you care about that or not. For me, I'm willing to pay a little bit more, a quite considerable bit more. You know, these are about, I don't know, £4 each, and this is about £12 each. But yeah, I like the history of it. I'm also tempted to cut my 8 tags right in the middle so I can have this RS made in England on the bottom of it. What do we think about that? Now, to cut these, I like to use a hacksaw blade. I've told the story a million times that usually on board a warship, when you come to need a hacksaw, you go to the workshop, which is maybe 5 decks away from where you're usually working. You'll get to the workshop, open a hacksaw drawer. There'll be no hacksaws in there whatsoever, and there'll just be 1 or 2 blades in the bottom. So I've kind of got used to using just the blade. But I know it annoys the internet. I know it annoys people like my father-in-law, Glyn. He absolutely despises me using just a hacksaw blade. So just for him, I bought this cheap little handle to hold my hacksaw blade. That's for you, Glyn, just to keep you happy, mate. Right, so to cut this, we count 8 along. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then just give it a saw. Little bit tedious. Cut right the way through it. And there we have our 8 tags ready to go. So there's our tag board ready to go. Let's start populating it. Now, if we look at our drawing, this is the awesome drawing sent in by Shane, so thank you very much, mate. We can actually see that the first cap in line is a 2.2 microfarad, and I'm using this 1 microfarad. In my experience for a Rangemaster, right, once you get over 100 to maybe 150 NF, there's literally no difference. Not really, not discernibly. So you could really go down to 150 NF and it still sounds roughly, relatively the same, in my opinion. If you would disagree with that, please let me know in the comments. Awesome to spark up a conversation about cap values. I'm a bit of a geek in that way. But I've chose this 1 microfarad just because I have these caps and I really like them. They're great. So how am I going to fit in? Well, I'm going to clean the legs for the start because it's an old one and the legs have got a bit of crud on them, which is no good. Then I'm going to make sure that I orientate it with the markings facing uppermost so people can see what it is. You know, what is this? It's a KY24 TAC2. So it's like the KY409 type cap, if you like. I'm going to bend the leg straight down and then I'm going to use my awesome flat nose Nipex snips to bend the legs back in on themselves. Right, roughly in line with the body. Now what this does is, it allows me to bend them back on themselves and make it through these eyelet holes so the cap sits above. And to do that, I'm going to take my snips. You could use the flat nose snips if you're worried about like snipping a leg off. And I have had a few people comment saying that I'm going to snip the legs off. It's never happened yet. And I'll just take a bite of the leg and bend it back on itself. And then same again this side, take a bite of the leg and bend it back on itself. Like so. And then we can just straighten them up. And it's real easy just to slot 1 leg in. I haven't quite made that long enough, but don't worry, we can get round that by just bending the tags in on themselves to give us a bit more space. Put 1 leg in, and then all we have to do is snip off the little bit that's hanging over the edge, and we'll be able to get that right in there. Now, that's pretty much where it needs to be. What I'm going to do is situate the cap so it's roughly central on the board, even either side. And then we can just take our soldering iron. For me, I'm using the Hakko FX888D. I do mean to keep you know, looking for a new soldering iron and upgrading this, but I love Hakko, they're great. And then give one leg a solder, let it dry off. I'm so tempted to blow the solder joint. I do that all the time, and I know you shouldn't. And then I'm going to bend the cap up and situate it so then it's square in all angles. Just because once we've soldered the next leg in, it's not going to move. There. This is the base part of our input cap in place. And if we just snip off the excess, in fact, I haven't soldered that very well at all. So if you look here, it's soldered in, but it's not exactly stable. So I'm going to give that another solder because, well, I want to sell this Rangemaster. I don't want it to be bad in any way, shape or form. Right, now that's in place. Good. Our next cap is going to be this 2.5 NF. Sorry, Shane, I am changing the values here yet again, just for my own preferences. And, you know, it wouldn't be really a Hello Sailor thing if I just left it alone with it. I'm going to straighten the legs out. Viewers will know that I'm a massive fan of these blue molded caps. They are easily my favourite capacitors in the world. Second to them is going to be like the Mullard mustard caps or tropical fish caps. And that's only because they're British, and I'm a massive fan of British. So, we clean the legs because they are old. There. And then we're going to do the same thing now. Bend the legs back on themselves to slot it through. The only difference is, at this end, these two tags, the first two tags on this board, join together. So I'm going to slot this leg longer and make it go through both tags. I'll show you how I do that. So we do the same thing again, bend them down on themselves. This time we've got longer legs to work with, which means that I can situate the leg a little bit longer, so then the cap sits higher off the board, which will also help even it up to this one. Now for this, I'm just going to go somewhere roughly close to the middle and bend back on itself, because again, we've got loads of leg to work with, and I'm using the edge of my flat nose pliers, my flat nose snips, as kind of like a measuring tool. And that way, both sides are going to be roughly, I mean, they don't have to be exactly, but they are going to be roughly the same. Ooh, seem to have tangled them up there. Well done, Joe. I'm actually at the Birmingham Guitar Show, so the largest guitar show in the UK, for a whole weekend, this weekend coming. And I'll have these with me if anyone's there. This video should go out on the Sunday while I'm still at the show. So if you see this, the show's still on. Get there now and come and check out some pedals. I'm well excited. So this leg here is going to go through, first of all, it's going to go through this tag. Then it's going to stretch through and go through this hole here. And I'm going to solder them together, and that will effectively join the two ends of these caps together. I'm sure there's thousands of ways you can achieve that, but that's just like how I like to do it. So if I slide the cap all the way through, then we can snip the excess off and slide this through the second tag along on the bottom row. Like so. And then all we have to do is centralise the cap. There. Now, I'm going to solder in this end, the bottom side, because there's nothing else going in this. Well, actually, that's a lie. There is a resistor going in here, but we'll fit it on the outside edge. So if I solder this leg in, that'll hold the cap in place. I'll tell you one thing with this military tag board. Even though it's the same size as the normal tag board, the holes are actually bigger. So it takes a little bit more soldering to fill up the hole. I think that's interesting. Now, I'm just going to straighten out this bottom leg, like so, and straighten out the cap in general, just so then it sits even, and then I can solder both of these in, and we'll move on to the next bit. Before we dig deeper into this awesome transistor pair, I'd like to just say thank you to everyone who supported the show so far. It blows my mind how much the channel's grown. I love it. If you want to support the channel, please consider buying pedals from HelloSailorFX.com. Follow this QR code here. You'll be able to find 4 of these Sziklai Rangemasters available in my store. Each one is individual. They're all going to have the same circuit as the one built today, but different transistors and kind of different enclosures. You know what I'm like, I like to keep it individual. Conversely, if you want to support the show but don't want to buy a pedal, consider buying some merch like this t-shirt. I've got my Popeye the Sailor Centaur t-shirt now available in the merch store or down below in the link. Thank you for supporting Hello Sailor Effects. It really does mean a lot to me. There's our cap now soldered in. But those of you who have been watching the channel for a while will know that I make quite a few mistakes when I'm building. And I've made a mistake here. Because if we look at our drawing, not only were these two tags joined together, great. But also, there's another 2 resistors going into the second tag in the top row. And being the genius that I am, I've just soldered that tag. So now I'm going to have to try and thread 2 resistors through that hole with solder in it. Not the best, but we can achieve it. Now our resistors today are these. One is a 470k resistor and the other is a 68k resistor. I think this is the 68k and this is the 470, but I don't exactly know because I can't read resistor colour bands. I'm pretty much not an electrical engineer. So to do that, what I am going to do is use my trusty Fluke 101 and put that into ohms, the little omega sign, and then I can just put the leads either side and we'll be able to know. And that is telling me that this is a 472. Well, it actually says 0.470 now, which is not what we're after, but also in the top right hand corner there, you can see that it doesn't say K, it says meg. So 470 meg ohm is 470 kilo ohm. So it is 470k. And this one here, just belts and braces, tells us that it's 68.7 k ohm. So we know that's 68 and that's 470. I was indeed correct. But, you know, measure twice, cut once and all of that jazz. We've already made one mistake today. Let's not make another. So the first one we're going to use is our 470k resistor. And that's going to go into this third tag along on the bottom row and then the second tag along on the top row. So to do that, what I am going to do is I'm just going to cut this leg a little bit shorter. I'm going to heat up my soldering iron, clean it with the solder tip cleaner and get a little bit of solder on the end of it because solder is like a lubricant for heat, if you like. So we'll be able to heat transfer. I'll heat up the tag to melt the solder that's in there and then I'll thread this resistor through. Now, there are better ways of doing this. You know, you could get some solder tip, some solder sucker and, you know, remove the excess solder so you don't have to do this. Fine, that'd be great. That's probably the right way to do it, quote unquote, right way, if there's ever such a thing. But for me, I'm just not going to do that because A, I'm lazy, and B, I hate them little solder suckers. I just despise them. Now, I'm going to bend this round and see if I can situate it so it's ready to go through the hole on the other side. And then heat this tag up again and just try and slide it through. There. It's not pretty and it's not in situ yet. But once we've got it sort of where it needs to be, I can manipulate the resistor round so then it's kind of sitting straight. Because it's important that it's sitting straight, right? It just is. And now our 68k resistor, again, is going to go in the second tag in the top row, the one that we have soldered, which I think I've actually just melted the solder out of now, so we won't have the issue. And then it's going to go down and go into this fourth tag along on the bottom row. This isn't the way I would have orientated a tag board myself, but I didn't make this layout and Shane was lovely enough to send me it and let me make a video with it. So I'm going to do it the way that he's done it. And spoiler alert, I think this is going to sound awesome. I'm actually going to put the 2 resistors on top of, well, one resistor on top of the other to make space in the center here. So if we bend that round, I'll show you in a second how I've done it, because we've got a trim pot to go in just underneath these resistors, and to give us space for the trim pot, I can sort of like stack these resistors together a la the cap stack from my favorite amp builder, Ken Fisher from Trainwreck Amps, who's no longer with us, sadly enough. Great loss that is, because he is a true legend and also was a Navy engineer, so that makes him awesome in my mind. Right, now I'm going to solder in this top tag again, the second tag along on the top row, just to cement these 2 resistors in place so they're not going anywhere, and we'll cut off the excess in a sec. So this is what we've got. We've got the two resistors on top of each other, and all that does is give us a nice bit of space in here, so then we can fit in our trim pot next. Next up, we've got our Iskra trim pot. This is a 10k trim pot, and it's going to go straight up and down between our 68k resistor in the fourth tag along to the fourth tag along in the top row. Now to do that, what I am going to do is this center tag, I'm just going to bend the tag, bend this tag straight out. And then also for this tag here, I'm going to bend, this leg, tag, whatever, bend that straight out, and they're going to be our two connections. So the last tag we don't need. All you need is the wiper, which is the one in the center, and one of the outside edges. It doesn't really matter which one. When we bias our transistors, we're just going to do it by ear, so there's nothing, you don't need to worry about the rotation of it. Now this should fit through, I'm hoping, and touch both sides without me having to extend any of the legs, which would be nice. And I think we're just going to make it. If not, we could extend the legs. If you're using a different type of trim pot, you might need to extend the legs. But let me get this first tag in. Wait there, double check. Do I need to solder anything else in these tags before I do it again? No, I don't. So you can solder both halves of this in. Like so. There. Now we can just straighten that up if you want. It's a little bit off kilter, but that's because the legs aren't exactly in line with each other, because one's the wiper in the centre and one's not. That'll do. Close enough for government work and all of that. And there is our trim pot in place. Now we're on to a 22 microfarad, so a 22 UF cap. I've got this one. I bought these as bypass caps for amplifier preamp stages some time ago. I've got a couple of them left, and I thought, why not use one for this? Brilliant. Now, if we look at our drawing, we can see that this cap goes in the next tag along from where we were just working, and then it goes up to the third tag from the end on the top row. And our negative side goes in the bottom side of the tagboard, and our positive side in the top side. So it's going to be situated there. The positive side of my axial cap is the side with the little dint in the top, and the negative side, as you can see, we have this stripe with the little arrows on it pointing to the negative side, and it's going to be situated like that. Now I want it to sit straight on the tagboard like this, so what I am going to do is I'm going to bend this leg over like so, and I'm just going to line it up so then I take a bend in the leg here, which should, he says, put this in line. Now, there's nothing else that goes into these tags in the center line anyway, so we can solder it in place. I've made that just a very tiny bit too long. Look at that. Might as well go back and shorten it, because then it'll fit in a bit better. There. It always baffles me how someone like Marcus Reeves does his intricate, solid, builds with just the component legs. It looks like basically artwork to me. It blows my mind. He has a different level of thinking about circuits to me. I keep getting questions about or requests for me to do a build like that, and I'm loath to do it because, my ego's massive, and if I'm not going to be the best at something, generally I don't want to do it. Like in work all the time, we do this yearly team building thing. It's a Navy thing. It used to be like you just go out drinking and build a team, everyone's all happy. But now they do like a sport, like axe throwing or whatever. And in my work now, they're all into go-karting. And every year they say, why don't you come chief go-karting, whatever. I'm like, I'm not going to win, so why would I take part? And I've just always been like that. And I know it's not right, but that's the way I am. And I'm never going to build a pedal doing a point-to-point, the true point-to-point stuff, as well as Marcus Reeves or one of them. And I think, why bother? I have my lane, which is Tagboard, and I'm rather proficient at it, if I do say so myself. So I think I'm just going to stick to that. Anyway, let's solder both legs in and move on. There we go. Let's get the excess snipped off. And of course, these long component legs, I'm going to save them because they're going to become important later. Now for the last component in the centre of the tagboard, it's our 10 NF cap, or 0.01 microfarad cap. I'm using this ITT cap. It's a Mika cap, rather expensive. I managed to snag a big box of them actually, which I'm rather happy about. They sound pretty decent. Now for this one, again, the legs or the cap itself is quite wide. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to angle the legs in slightly. And then I'm just going to put my spacer Knipex snips at the tip of the cap and just bend the legs out. Like so. And that should mean that we can slot it in into the tags and also keep it even. Like this. So what I like to do is slide it all the way in one way. And then we take our snips. Cut this excess off here. I'm going to save that just in case we need it later on. Spoiler alert, we will. Centre the cap and then we can solder both ends in now. This is our output cap. You could increase the value of this if you wanted to make your pedal sound fatter, but honestly, 10 NF is kind of the sweet spot for a Rangemaster, in my opinion. Sometimes I do go up to 22 NF, but not when I've got these awesome 10 NF caps to do. There. Now we're on to the bits on the outside edge. Right, now looking at our drawing, we can see that on the outside edge over here, there's a 47 ohm resistor. Now I don't have any 47 ohm resistors, believe it or not, but what I do have is a load of these 11 ohm, well I think they measure around 11 ohm resistors. Two of them are these big carbon comp ones, and then two of these, I think they're carbon film. They're all really old. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a little resistor network to go in there basically and take the place of a 47 ohm resistor. This may be 44 ohms, which is close enough for government work in my mind. Now these are old, so I'm going to clean all the legs as ever, and I know people hate me doing this with my Knipex snips, but it's just the way that I do it. I get a lot of comments of people saying use, you know, some sort of Scotch-Brite or emery cloth or sandpaper or blah 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 blah. I didn't say it way here. It's just like the hacksaw blade, and just like using the Stanley blade for cutting out my Vero strips. I can't move away from it because this is what I've always done. It's funny how some things really annoy the internet, isn't it? Now, to make this little resistor network, I'm going to put these two as the legs, if you like, as the bottom, and then these two attaching to them to make like a little arch. And to do that, I'm going to put them at an angle and do what I call, and I haven't said this on video for a while, the helicopter method, which is basically marrying the legs up by twisting them together like a helicopter rotor. Get on that. And regular viewers will know that I absolutely despise helicopters. I can't imagine why anyone would ever go up in a helo. It blows my mind. I've been in the Navy for maybe 2 years when I pulled my first helo out of the water. No one ever survives. It was HMS Portland, actually. Their helicopter, and you know, it was a Lynx, probably I think it might have been a Lynx Mark 7. Anyway, it was a Lynx, and there was just pieces of helicopter and people. I don't understand why anyone would want to risk their lives going in one of them death traps. No, thank you. Anyway, moving on. I'm using the helicopter method to join all the legs of these together, and we've made like a kind of arch. Now, just to belts and braces, I am going to measure it. I think this is going to be rather low compared to the 47 ohms that we need, but I'm hoping it's going to work, and if it doesn't, we'll just adjust it later. We're a bit short there. Maybe I'll add another one in. No, I'm not adding another one. I'm going to go with this, and we'll see what difference it makes. So, sorry, Mr. Sziklai, I know you designed this, but there you go. And sorry, Shane, I'm moving away from your drawing yet again. So in the other ones that I build, the other 3 pedals that will be available at the same time as this one with this video, I'll use an actual 47 ohm resistor, so don't worry there. Now, in fact, I've got some pretty cool enclosures. I can't wait to show you them. When I cut these little excess bits off, if you cut it so close to the body of the resistor, they'll end up just falling apart. You don't get a good connection. And it's so tempting to go close because it looks neater. But if you move 1 or 2 rungs away and snip it off there, it's just more stable. And, you know, the fact that it being joined together is much more important than it looking neat, and that's the first and last time you're ever going to hear me say that, because as you know, looks are important to me on these pedals. Now this straddles across the top of this trim pot, so it goes to these two blank tags here, and all I'm going to do is I'll push them together a little bit. I'll take my flat nose snips, I'll make sure that they're level, and then I'll move down a little bit because there's lots of space in this enclosure to go upwards. It's quite deep, and I'll just move the legs up like that. And then if we snip off the excess, I should have really saved that one because these are good legs. Look at that, vintage legs for tone. We'll use that later. And then this is just going to go, I'm probably going to put it on the outside edge, inside edge. Let's have a look. I'm going to slot it through them two open tags. There. Now there's nothing else going into these apart from one of our transistors when we get to it, so I can solder them in place now. And as ever, I'm going to solder one of them, straighten the whole thing up, and then we'll get on to soldering the other. It's not going to sit as even as I wanted it to because our large caps, maybe if I bend them over a little bit, we can get it in there. Again, looks are important. You may not find that looks are important, but I really think they are. There's both legs soldered in. If we snip off the excess, there's our 47 ohm or not resistor in place. Next up, we're going to look at our 47 microfarad cap, which is this one here. This is a Samsung cap. It's not particularly old. It's maybe 90s technology or 90s dated, but I like these axial caps. It's going in over here. And what this is going to do is it's going to go in this tag here and this tag here with the earth side of it. So the side with the stripe going to the left hand side behind this cap. So all I'm going to do is straighten out my earth leg so I can try and slide it in behind this cap here. But one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of my sheathing from my silicone wire, another great reason to use silicone wire, and slide it over this leg just because I don't want it to foul on the back of this other cap that I've slid in there. And now I could put it on the outside here, no problem, but there's also this big space on the tagboard here that looks a bit odd to me, so I want to fill it. I'm going to slide the cap in here, maybe slide this down the leg a little bit so then it's protecting the leg against that cap that's in place next to it. And then all we have to do is bend the body round so it's lying flat on the tagboard next to this one. And then we can solder them in, and that kind of fills that little gap that was annoying me. I feel like this helps the layout a little bit. Seems like it flows a bit better. I'd love to know what you think about that in the comments. There. Now last but not least, we have our 1 meg resistor, which is this. And that is going to go between the last tag on this row and this tag here. So we miss one and then go in, which is the negative side of our cap that we've just fitted. And this is obviously an anti-pop resistor for the output. Actually, I just told a lie. There's one more 1 meg cap to go in, which is, as we look at our drawing, you can see it goes from our 5 NF cap on the drawing, which is for us, it is this 2.5 NF cap here, and it skips a tag and goes into the bottom of our trim pot. And that is again an anti-pop resistor. I'm going to go ahead and get them fitted now. There's our 2 anti-pop resistors now in place. We're looking good. There's one more thing to do, and that is to add in a few link wires. So if we look at our drawing, we can see on the bottom row, we have 3 ground tags in the center linked together. And then in the top row, we have the emitter of 1 transistor, or NPN germanium, is linked to the collector of the other PNP germanium via a little link wire. So how am I going to do this? Well, I'm going to take these legs that we snipped off before and saved, and I'm going to use that to link them all together. For this front piece here, for the grounds, I'm just going to lie it across the 3 tags, solder it in place in all 3 positions, and then snip off the excess. Easy. But for this back part here, all I'm going to do is I'll take my leg, I'll bend it into a U, and then I'll just solder it to the tags where it needs to go straight in. Nice and easy. So now we're on to the transistors. And of course, we've got our awesome NKT transistors, one NPN and one PNP from our Pi Poplar radio. Brilliant. If we look at our drawing, we can see the first one is the NPN Germanium, which is this one, the 773. So I'll be using my P-Catalyst DCA 55 to test it. If you want one of these, there will be a link in the description that you can follow to my Amazon affiliates, which means that if you purchase one of these, I'll get a little bit of a kickback. No extra charge to yourself. And it does help fund things like me buying more of these cool little gizmos. So I know we've tested this already, but I'm going to just test it again. And I'm going to check the pin out because measure twice, cut once. Why not? So this tells us it's an NPN Germanium transistor. It gives us our pin out. Current gain of 63, which is higher than what we want. You really want 10 to 30 maybe for these. And it says that the leakage is 140 milliamps. Now this is absolutely usable on its own, but we're going to stick it in this anyway. Now, if we look at our drawing, we can see it goes base, collector, emitter. And on here, we've got the emitter on this side, the blue. The green is the collector and the red is the base. So I'm going to have to swap over the green and the red. And to be fair, the transistor's naturally sitting that way. There. So I'm going to put it in like so. Now the question is, do I need to sheave off one of the legs or is it going to go in there? I think I'm probably going to just bend both of the outside legs out and have our collector going straight down in the middle. I'll attach the collector in and then maybe we'll add in little link wires to go out to the legs, just because I don't really want to try and, like, I don't know, stretch and foul the legs on anything or short anything out. So there's our centre leg in here. And do you know what I love? Is the fact that the way this is lying now, you can see the NKT 773 sticking uppermost. That really does. I know it shouldn't, but it just satisfies my, you know, my branding need, if you like. So now I'm just going to flatten the legs out so they stick straight out. And then to actually solder them in, I'm going to take one of our old component legs. Told you these would come in handy. I'll snip it in half so I've got two. And then we can solder one in here and one in here. Like so. And all that's going to do is, it just gives us a bit of length on them legs so we don't have to try and bend anything into shape. Once we get them soldered in, we can make them meet the legs on the transistor. So now they're in place, like so. We can make them meet the legs on the transistor without the transistor, you know, being bent out of shape or damaged or anything like that. You know, it is an old transistor. And I'm just going to solder them in up against the transistor legs. There we go. It's a bit fiddly. There. And then once we snip off the excess, we should be ready to go. Bearing in mind, if this doesn't work or it doesn't sound right, I'll probably just change this out for something. It's no hassle whatsoever. But there's our first transistor in. Now, if we look at the drawing again, we can see the PNP Germanium transistor is also base collector emitter instead of collector base emitter. So we're probably going to have to do the same thing for this NKT275. But let's see. So we take our P-Catalyst DCA 55 again. I really couldn't build Fuzz or Germanium transistor pedals without this thing now. So handy. Before this, I was literally building blind. That's what it's like. So let's test it. And I've actually changed the battery in it this time, so it's not going to run out of battery halfway through. Get on that. This says PNP Germanium transistor. Yes, we know. Gives us our pin out, which is important. And a current gain of 82 HFE for an NKT275. To be in this range, this makes this a very expensive and coveted transistor. I should really use it in something else. And its leakage is 200 milliamps, 213. That's right on the hairy edge that I would use for a Rangemaster. and possibly even Q2 in a fuzz face or something like that. But still, this is a very, very, very expensive transistor, which is going to push the price of this particular pedal up. So if you're willing to shell out for something spectacular, this one is going to be available, but also the other three in this line are going to be a bit cheaper. So this is telling us the base is red in the center there. Our blue is our collector, which is our red dot. And by the way, the red dot doesn't mean high gain and a white dot low gain or whatever the hell come out of the old analog man theory. All that is, and I'm sure I've explained it a million times, is it's just the paint that they had on the day or the paint that they were using in the factory at the time. This also tells us that our emitter is the green one here. So emitter, these two have got to swap over. So if I take these out, these two swap over and our emitter sits that side. Now I'm going to have to figure out a way of bending these round so the 275 sits uppermost because, you know, it's me. So let's have a look. Our emitter is going to go into the second tag from the end. Basically, it's just following on from where the last transistor was. So if we soldered it in place just like we did the last one, try and get it to sit evenly. There. Now all I'm going to do is the unspeakable and twist it round just so then the 275 is sitting uppermost. No other reason than pure vanity. And I know some people aren't going to like that, but there you go. Maybe I'll get it so the NKT is just uppermost as well. There. For me, that just makes all the difference. I know some people are going to hate it, but I can't help myself. What can I say? And then if I bend the legs out, I might even get away with putting this one straight to it. We shall see. What I don't want to do is snap one of the legs off and ruin this rather nice and expensive transistor. Actually, I'm going to get away with that. So if I solder that leg in, we're only going to have to add one link wire in. Or sorry, one external leg, if you like, to make it to this other side. But no problem. This is the stuff that really floats my boat, is making a really cool old transistor work in something like this. I just love it. For me, I'm definitely willing to pay more for something like this. My R2R electric Rangemaster has got an original OC44 in it. You know, them things aren't cheap, and I would have paid much, much more than Chris Vincent was charging at the time when I bought them anyway. There we are. There's our two transistors in place. We've got an original NKT 773 NPN germanium and an NKT 275 PNP germanium, arranged as a Sziklai pair. Now, let's get this inside the enclosure and get our 10k boost and our 100k tone pot in place. One question I get quite a bit is, how do I attach the board into the enclosure? Well, I'm going to show you here. I like to use these. These are sellotape double-sided sticky pads. I think these are fantastic. I've been using them for years and I could not build pedals without them. I don't really like having bolts going through the enclosure. I think it ruins the aesthetic of it, although they are stable. So what do? I take two pads, fold them in on each other, so you get one big pad, and I do that twice over. For something this size, definitely I'll have two of these, like so. There. And now these aren't really strong enough to hold it in place, especially not if you've got a gigging musician, or maybe the pedal's getting delivered to somewhere like Texas. The stickiness on these will just melt off in the sun. It's not stable enough. So I also like to use belt and braces and add this in. This is JB Weld steel reinforced epoxy. Now, people either like it or don't like it. I don't care. This stuff reminds me of a time in my life on board HMS Kent when we were kind of stranded out in Guam. Everything was broke. We couldn't get stores, and we used a hell of a lot of this stuff to patch the ship together and keep it going, and it became a running joke in my department. Now, it used to be like, oh, we're going to fix it. Oh, we'll put some JB Weld on it, and everyone would laugh because it never lasts. But it is strong enough to hold this sort of tagboard into a pedal. So what do? I like to take a little bit of either of these, depending on how much, how many pedals you're doing. You don't need a lot of it. This is the hardener. And this stuff stinks, by the way. So if you're using this, it's sensible to use it in somewhere where you've got a little bit of ventilation. And this is the steel reinforced epoxy. This actually doesn't conduct as well, by the way. So if anyone's wondering if you get it on your electrical components, will it conduct? I mean, I wouldn't goop a pedal in it. I'd never goop a pedal anyway, because you're hiding all the awesome components you're using. And vanity is a thing in my builds, let's face it. So anyway, it's a 50-50 mix. If you want it to dry faster, you can put a little bit more hardener in there and it'll dry faster. But I tend to go for the 50-50 mix. Mix it all up. Perfect. That'll do. Now, on the bottom of our tagboard, I'm going to put my 2 sticky strips. So I put them somewhere near the centre of the tagboard, so then they're hidden in between the holes. I don't like covering the holes because you get like a little bit of white showing through. Sometimes you'd have to do that, but I'd rather not. And then again, next to it here. He says covering one of the bloody holes. Perfect. Then if we take off our uppermost strip, that's what's going to hold it in place while this stuff sets. So I like to take a thin layer of this stuff and put it in between the two. The reason for that is, well, just to add a bit of strength and hold it in there. Like so. And then on either side, I like to add a blob of this stuff that goes from the tagboard directly to the top of this pad. Why? I think it's just like a direct link between the tagboard itself and the enclosure. So you get a bit of a sturdy, you're not relying on the foam of the pad basically. And I do this on either side of this little formation. Okay, this isn't the best way of doing it. And people are going to say, there's a million and other things I could use. But trial and error. I've been building pedals for since 2008? It's a long time. I've been building pedals a long time. And I've just settled on this way of adding the tagboards in. I like it. And I'm sure there's better ways of doing it. I'm sure people are going to tell me in the comments. But there you go. Now, for this, I'm going to put it smack bang in the centre because this is a massive enclosure. There's loads of room. Sometimes I like to put them off to the side so you've got space to run the wires. But for this one, it's going to be central because, like I said, we've got loads of room. And also, I kind of like the idea of having the 2 NKT transistors in the centre of the pedal on show. So the foam pad's going to hold it in place. Just give that a little bit of a firm press. And then the epoxy resin will dry and that'll just be a solid fixing. And that's how I like to fix them in. Now, I know that I say this all the time, but this is the part where the pedal's character really starts to come out. It's the part where you can start to tell the builder's signature. It is, of course, the wiring. And of course, I'm going to be using my same single wire and loom technique that I use for all of my pedals with loads of cable ties that seem to annoy the internet. I'd like to know how you wire your pedals. Do you use solid core wire? Do you use the silicone wire that I use, or do you use something else? Let me know in the comments. Now it's time to start adding the wires and wiring up this tagboard. If we look at our drawing, we can see on the left hand side, the first wires to go in is the bottom of our large cap is going to our 100k range pot, which is a tone pot. And then also the next tag along is going to the other side of the tone pot and joining the 2 lugs together. And then we've got this green wire coming out and going to our input. Well, for me, on our input, I'm going to follow it down here and it's going to join this back center tag here to the front left tag. I like to join them 2 together and I'll show you why later on, but I advise that you just follow this. And I'm going to join them 2 together coming from here. Then another wire is going to come out and go round to here. And this here is going to attach into here. There's our input wired in. So we've got the input coming from over here, round, going into this cap here. And then we can also blend in this 1 microfarad cap using this pot here. It's a different way that I would do it. Normally I would send the input in round this way to this center pin and then have the 2 wires coming out here and going to each cap. and then you've got a blend between the two. Really interesting way of doing it, and I'm glad I've wired it in this way. If we look at our drawing, we can now see that there's an orange wire going from the bottom of this 470k resistor. It loops across to the opposite side of our 47 microfarad cap, and then it goes to 9 volt DC. How am I going to wire this in? Well, I'm going to, from this here, this is our DC barrel jack, I'm going to run a wire that links both of these two pins together, because I don't use a battery, so this center pin should really just be left untouched, but I like to solder them both in. I'll run the wire round, it'll come round, follow this wiring loom here, up, and then it'll go to the bottom of our 470k. I'll also take a loop out, that'll go round and go to the bottom of our 47, did I say 470k, yeah? And then it'll go, a loop will come round and go to the bottom of our 47 microfarad cap. Now from this, I'm going to run a resistor out, which will be our current limiting resistor for our LED, over to the longer leg of our LED. That way, we've got it kind of wired in place, and there's a nice little space here. There won't be any wire in there, so I can use maybe, I don't know, I'm probably going to use one of my older caps. So I've got, check these out. I found a load of these old, like, I don't know what you would call them, containers. I bought a large box full of them, and they've just got random caps in and random resistors, and these are about 10 ohms. So I'm going to run one of these 10 ohm resistors from here up to this, and then from this center pin here, we'll run the earth side of it with maybe a 1k or maybe a 2k resistor going from here around to here. Just so then I can use one of these big, fat, old resistors in there for no other reason than I think it looks good. I'm sure there'll be people that disagree with that, but I don't care. That's what I'm going to do. Now that we've got our positive wires now wired in, I'm going to move on to the negative wires. And if we look at our drawing, we can see we've got our 3 little ground links here. Now, Shane's taken the end ground link and run a wire from that. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to take it from the very first ground link, which is here. And I'm going to run that wire round. It's going to come right the way round to our 9 volt barrel jack here. Now, I'm going to run the wire to here, and then I'm also going to run a wire or a bare wire straight the way across the top of our 2 jacks and add them 2 earth points straight to this. Now, I know that they're earth through the enclosure, but I don't care. I like to just have that extra connection in there. It also adds a bit of rigidity between these two anyway. We're also going to take a line from here that's going to come down and go to, no, we're not. I nearly run the negative to here, which isn't true because it actually comes from our positive on this one. So scratch that. It's just going to come round and go over the top of them two. Then also I'm going to use the next tag along, which is also linked because all 3 of these tags are linked together. I'm going to use the next tag along and run a wire around, and that's going to go to the center pin of our 3-pole double throw switch. It's going to come round the back here and go up what I like to call a ponytail. Last but not least, for this bottom row is going to be the opposite side of our output cap. That is going to go to this front right hand pin here, which is the output of the pedal. I'm going to run a wire from here underneath all of this wiring loom, round this way, and then back up round the back to get to here. Now I realise that's a bit backwards. I could just go straight over to here, but I like to have just one wiring loom going through the place. You know, I always say this, that wiring a pedal is kind of like your signature, and the way that you wire the pedal, you know, I can tell a Marcus Reeves pedal or an R2R electric pedal or something like a Tate FX pedal or a Thorpe FX pedal because of the way that they're wired inside. And it's just important to me. I'm sure, as ever, there's going to be loads of people that disagree on the internet and say, you know, I'm inducing noise. Well, actually, if you stick around to the end, I'm going to show you how you can get rid of that little noise induction via wiring this route with a simple cap. And I do get a lot of people say, well, use shielded wire and blah, blah, blah. It's just not what I do. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get that fitted now. Now, the astute among you will notice that there's one wire I missed out from the bottom of here. And that is an orange wire coming from the bottom of this cap here. No, it's a grey wire, sorry, coming from the bottom of this 47 microfarad cap here, which is basically coming from the 9 volt, right? The 9 volt rail, and going to tag 1, sorry, of our 10k pot. Why haven't I added that in? Well, look how close this pot is to the 9-volt jack here. I might as well just run a solid core wire, one of our offcuts, straight from this 9-volt barrel jack down to this here, and that'll just add a little bit of strength in there because it's solid core. Great, it joins it all together and it hasn't got to travel as far. And I know I've done loads of travelling with wires. That was unnecessary in this build, and I'm not doing it for this bit. Great. Also, on the top row, there's only 2 wires that come off here. One comes from the emitter of our NKT275 and goes to pin 3 of our 10K pot, and the other comes from this side of our output cap and goes to pin 2, the wiper of our 10K pot. Again, I'm going to be using offcuts for both of these just because they're right in situ, I might as well. There's all of our solid core wires now in place. You can see we've got pins 3, 2 and 1 all wired in. Now we're almost done, so if you've watched this far, please stick around and you'll get to hear the sound sample and hear how this combination of vintage NKT transistors sounds in action. And we're also going to hear a different combination of transistors as well in one of the other pedals. Last wires to go in now are going to be our input and output. So because the pedal's upside down, remember the input is on the left and not the right. This tag here is our input. That's going to follow around here and go to here, the left-hand side of our 3-pole double throw switch. Then we've got our output, which is here. That's going to follow around, again, same wiring loop, and go to the right-hand side of our 3-pole double throw switch. Then, the last but not least bit that I always forget is the little link wire that goes between this tag here and this tag here, and that is for our bypass signal. That'll be the last thing to go in. I'm going to go ahead and get that wired up now. Now we're cooking with gas. We've got all of our wires in place. We've got a load of pink cable ties, especially for Glyn, because I know he hates me putting loads of cable ties in. And I think this is looking rather handsome. I really hope that these 2 transistors perform well together. Actually, I really hope that this passes sound. It should do, but I just don't know because I've never built one before. If we have any snags, I'm probably going to change the NKT773 before the 275, just because, you know, this is a fancy transistor and I really want it in there. Now this is where the Sziklai pair starts to show its metal. It is of course biasing the transistors. This either makes or breaks any sort of treble booster build, and it's probably the most important part. So if you take nothing else away from this video, apart from the idea of course, this is the part to pay attention to. This is my setup now ready to go. I'm going to press play on the TC wiretap. We're going to hear a signal that isn't suited to a Rangemaster basically. So the wiretap is an electronic device, is a digital device, sorry. And that's going to put a digital signal into the input, which isn't great, but it is perfect just to test out this sort of, you know, bias in it. What I've got now is I've got my boost set all the way up so it's maxed out, and I've got it set to the most trebly position. So there's 100k resistance between the 1 microfarad cap and our input. I'll press play and then I'll adjust with my Allen key the potentiometer through its full sweep, so you'll hear it unbiased at both ends, and then we'll settle in using ear right in the middle somewhere. Now what I like to do is with my wiretap, I set it into some sort of chord progression rather than single note playing, just because I find that you get a better picture of what you're listening to. And then we'll do some single note playing with my terrible playing later on. So without further ado, this is well, there's the bypass signal. And there's the misbias signal. So right, what are we going to do? Let's just turn it through its full range of motion. And that is misbiased at the other end. Let's see what it sounds like when we adjust the tone pot. So we get nothing this end. Let's see what we get when we rebias it. You can hear there's a small window where it sounds good. So if I go this way, misbiased, and then go the other way, misbiased. Just get it in the middle of that window. And then if we lower the volume, it doesn't choke out. I'm calling that good. So we'll get a guitar into the front of it and see how it sounds. And then I tell you what, if it doesn't sound good, I'm going to be changing this NKT. Oh, you can hear that. You'll be changing this NKT 773 NPN germanium transistor, but I really don't want to. I'm quite happy to leave it as it is. Okay, so I'm going to be using stripe for this comparison. And we've also got in one of my Rangemasters. This is actually a silicon Rangemaster, but it's a real low gain one, so it should operate roughly similar. It just adds in a little bit of context. So here's my clean tone. So what's the clean tone? Of course it is my Blonde Fender Showman and my Victory DB40. Split between the two. So any wet effects are going to go to just the Showman, and just the drives will go to the Victory V40. But that's not really wet, dry, is it? It's sort of like, I don't know, damp, dry, whatever. Anyway. So let's hear it. Now, oddly enough, you can hear there's not loads of gain. I thought there would be loads of gain. And if we move our tone control, we see that it increases the bass the more we increase it. So really, I'm going to switch them wires round and have it operate in the opposite direction, because I think dialing it down should increase the bass and dialing it up should increase the treble. But here we go. Now let's try the Rangemaster. Let's dial the gain back, or the volume back on a Rangemaster, because there's much more boost available and I want to make it even. More of a trebly sound. Turn that back a bit to get a bit more of a trebly sound. I mean, the Rangemaster for me is just where it's at. And even though it's silicon, it definitely cleans up too. But you can hear the Rangemaster. A lot more noise in the background than regular Rangemaster. My question is, I wonder what they sound like when you stack them both together. So, let's hear that. So this is interesting. We're going to change out that NPN transistor, and I've never seen one of these before. So if you've seen one, let me know in the comments, because I'd love to be able to buy more. It's this. So this is actually a 2N3904 transistor, most commonly found in a regular small black packaging that most people will have seen, but I've never seen this. The glob type with gold pin legs. It's insane. I bought a large stock of components and this come in it. So can we read it there? 2N3904. It's probably the most used NPN silicon transistor in existence. But why has it got this packaging? I don't know. I've never seen it before. And if you know where I can buy more of them, please let me know, because I'm 100% interested. I've got two of these, and I figure one of them might well be useful in this. So we're going to use our Peak Atlas DCA55 to see what it tests like. And if it tests rubbish, I won't use it. So it tells us it's an NPN silicon, gives us our pin out. Now this is a fun one. So it's got a current gain of 198. That's way too high, but I'm still going to use it. No, sorry, 190, but I'm still going to use it. Let's see what we're talking about. There's no leakage because it's NPN. So that's definitely getting used. Now let's take out our old transistor. Old transistor, the one that was in there before that we're not going to be using. Now I'm using my flat nose pliers on the transistor sides as I'm doing it, and that's because they're going to be used as like a heat sink to stop the transistor from being damaged on the way out, because I will use it for something else. Hey, there's no guarantee that I like this 2N3904, so we may have to swap that out as well. Right, so now, oddly enough, we're going to have to test it again to get the pin out, because I can't remember which way round it goes. And no doubt we'll have to swap over 2 legs, but we shall see. Because the NKT275 special, I feel like I needed to add a special transistor in to match it up. I don't know. And this is about as special as I can think of for an NPN. So red is the emitter, which is on the right hand side here. Green is the collector and blue is the base. So green, them two have to swap over because ours goes base, collector, emitter in this layout. There. Now I am going to use a little bit of an offcut. If I can ever find my snips, a little bit of an offcut to shield that centre leg. I probably don't need to, but I'm going to anyway. I love that this comes in a different packaging, and I absolutely love the gold pin and whatever. It's kind of like someone mentioned in another video, it's Marcus Reeves specs because he uses a lot of this style transistor. Now, I think I might add it. Do I add it on the end here or? Let's just get one leg in and then we'll deal with the rest of them. So there's our emitter in. I'll tell you what, it's going to be real awkward trying to squeeze it through the soldered leg. So if I just add a bit of heat to each of the tags, what's going to happen is the solder wicks down and follows the heat and it ends up dropping out to the bottom. And then that way I can take this again, remembering that our crossed over legs go to the left hand side, or my left hand side as I'm looking at it. There. Now if I get that centre leg soldered in, I'll be able to straighten everything up and go from there. I've been dying to use these transistors. I just haven't had a project to do it, so hopefully this justifies it. And if it doesn't sound good, we'll pull it out and we'll go for something a little lower gain. But I'm hoping it will. Of course, we're going to have to rebias, but we've seen that before, so I'll rebias it off camera. We know how to do that one. Just tidy that up now. There. Now we're ready to go for the sound sample. And now we're on to the sound sample, the part you've all been waiting for. You'll get to hear how the Sziklai pair in this pedal sounds up against some of the other pedals that I built in this line. Before we get to the sound sample though, I'd like to just say that all 4 of these pedals will be available at hellosailoreffects.com if you follow this QR code here. Thank you for buying pedals from me. It really does help keep Hello Sailor Effects going. Now, I'd like to know in the comments what you think of each of the sounds from these, and also what you think of the Rangemaster that I'm going to throw in the mix just as a bit of context. Now we've got that transistor changed over for the gold pin 2N3904. What does it sound like? Well, here's my clean tone. And against the normal Rangemaster. Oh man, so much more happy with how this sounds now. I'm going to go ahead and plug it in next to the old Germanium version that has an orange jacket OC45 British made Mullard transistor and a CV7112 Germanium military spec transistor. also from Mullard. So now we have the pair of them set up. We've got our hybrid one, which is our 2N3904 silicon, along with the NKT275. And in this one, we've got the military spec NPN CV7112 germanium transistor going into an orange jacket Mullard OC45. Here is my clean tone. Another hybrid. Another all germanium. Let's hit it with some chords. The germanium version sounds much fatter, doesn't it? Let's roll back the guitar's volume and see if we can get a clean tone. Neck pickup. Dial it back and give it a bit more bass on both of them, all the way round to the bass setting. And here's my clean tone with the Les Paul. Monmouth Octave Fuzz. We'll turn it all up in a minute when we've finished with our Rangemaster. I don't know, I think I prefer it without just with the Monmouth Octave Fuzz maxed and without the Rangemaster on. Okay, so the Octave Fuzz sounds better on its own, which is odd because I assumed that the Octave Fuzz needed something boosted into it to make it sound good. I was completely wrong there. I would like to ask though, would you like to see a build video for the Monmouth Octave Fuzz? I mean, we're talking about neck pickup here, just the Octave Fuzz. You don't need to pray to the gods or align the tone, whatever, to try and, you know, get an octave out of it. It works anyway. Love it. So what did we think of the sound sample? I've got to say, I'm really surprised by this transistor pairing. It kind of feels like it shouldn't work, but it just does. Thank you for watching the show thus far. I really do appreciate it. And if you enjoyed this video, you're going to love this video.